Hello, my name's Faye and this is Faye's Parallel Stories, and I thought I'd give you a little bit of a belated wrap up of my May reading month. We are already heavily into June now. It's super warm here already, and my May reading month was not great, but there was the Springathon readathon, which was dedicated to reading nature writing, mainly non-fiction. And that, on the one hand, really motivated my reading, on the other hand, also stalled it. So I thought I would just jump into it. I read, one book I finished at the beginning of the month, totally unrelated to Springathon or nature writing, which was The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren. Is that the name of the writing duo? Which is a romance book. And I've already forgotten most about it, which isn't the biggest compliment, I guess. It is the two assistants of a middle-aged writing and interior design duo go on a cross-country PR trip with them, trying to not have this couple who's built this imperium have a huge fight, and along the way find out that they do actually like each other, the assistants, that is. Yeah, sort of fun plot, because I do love the sort of forced proximity trope within romance books. If you've watched the odd video of mine, you know that I read quite a broad range of novels, but I do really have a special spot for romance books. So that I read at the beginning of the month. I think I gave it like a middling 3 stars, maybe even 2. I don't know. I wasn't blown away by it, and the end was sort of blah blah blah. This also sets the stage for a weird reading month, because I didn't finish 2 books. Didn't finish, that's I DNF'd 2 books, meaning that I will put them aside and I will not pick them back up again. I wrote them down, old school, on a piece of paper, because I was reading them on the Scribd app. The first was How to Raise a Wild Child, The Art and Science of Falling in Love with Nature by Scott D. Sampson. And this really didn't have anything wrong with it, to be honest. It's his sort of personal account of how important growing up in wild, unstructured nature, experiencing it all, how valuable that is for the development of kids. And maybe part of the problem was that I was just like, yeah, definitely, I agree, sure. But at least as far as I got, there wasn't that much sort of sciencey stuff backing it up, which I would have found interesting. Sort of more developmental psychology would have been fun. And then there were like tidbits, which I did like, of him talking about his experience with his own children. But also then there's also the goal with the book to give the readers ideas on how to foster the children's love for nature, and that was just a bit too irrelevant for my life, if I'm completely honest. And sort of reading that wasn't fun for me because it didn't apply to my own situation. But it's not that I don't recommend the book, so I put it aside. I think I read like 20% or so. Then I read far more, maybe like 2/3, 3/4 of Snow, a scientific and cultural exploration by Giles Whittell. And I did get a kick out of reading a non-fiction book about snow in May, whilst spring was flirting with summer. But that wasn't quite enough. I liked the beginning. The beginning was what I was expecting this book to be. So in the beginning we talk a lot about the sort of chemical structure, like how snowflakes are created, why there is always this specific and individual form and pattern to snowflakes. Yes, he also somewhat talks about climate change and obviously the catastrophic change that we will see there. He goes through a few sort of theoretical scenarios. And then I sort of lost interest when he started talking more about the cultural relevance. He lost me on a section that I found really long-winded, where he talks about a James Bond movie and a stunt that they wanted to pull off, and sort of extreme sports. And fun fact, I've never in my life stood on skiers before, even though my mum is from the south of Germany. And maybe because of that, I was just like, meh, winter sports. I don't know, just didn't really grab me that much. I think I would have stuck around had there be more sort of sciencey geology stuff, but the whole cultural aspect of the book I wasn't really there for. Then I halted my progress in the Springathon readathon because I needed to read the Book of Hidden Things, which I was buddy reading with a friend of mine. This is by Francesco Dimitri and is a peculiar mix of sort of friends, mystery, thriller, fantasy, wants to sort of be a lot of things book. I won't go into detail about this because my friend and I recorded our Zoom session when we talked about this, and I'll try and see if I can pull some things out of that and do a bit more of a longer review and sort of highlighting our buddy read about it. It was like a great experience doing that. The book, however, mixed feelings. And then the two books that really suffice for me as a reason to do a May wrap up, even though the month on the whole wasn't an amazing reading experience, are the following two, which were securely placed in the Springathon readathon. The first was The Stranger in the Woods by Michael Finkel, what's the subtitle? The Extraordinary Story of the Last True Hermit. And this was not what I was expecting. I thought this would be the real story of a man who spent more than 2 decades completely by himself in the nature. And I thought it would be like a real sort of like survivalist nature-y story. Instead, we get more of a true crime book, where the crime is not like a violent, gory, horrible, horrific one. So this could be a cool tip for everyone who is squeamish but interested in true crime. We get the journalist's account, Michael Finkel's account, of meeting this man who was incarcerated after he'd been found living in the woods for many, many years, and he is incarcerated because he robs loads of people's homes to survive out there in the wild by himself. So he is in fact not a survivalist hero who sort of MacGyvers his way through life, but instead he steals Twinkies. So this was a fun read. It's also not too long, so it was just generally like a quick read, short chapters. It's sort of peculiar that the author, the journalist who talks to the man whose name, Christopher Knight. Christopher Knight is the man who lived in the woods by himself. So it's kind of weird that the journalist doesn't build a really authentic relationship with Christopher Knight, which is strange, but also makes sense if you read the book, because he does dive into the personality of Christopher Knight and what would make a person want to spend his entire life completely secluded from any human contact. So that was really interesting. There's the sort of great anecdote of him only ever uttering one word to a person in these 20-something years, which is hey, to a hiker who passes him in the woods. And that's completely it. Crazy pants. So I do recommend it. It was fun. This wasn't like... That's the doorbell. Sorry. Ha! Now I have to super sprint through this. So, it wasn't great, but it was a very, very fun subject matter. And then, the highlight of my month was Lab Girl by Hope Jahren. She is a paleobiologist. How cool. And she writes about her own path of becoming a professor to much acclaim, but all the struggle along the way. The best part of this is her friendship with a bachelor student to begin with when she meets him. I believe she's working on a PhD when he starts working in her lab. And a beautiful friendship ensues that spans their entire life. And it never turns into anything more, which, hurrah, amazing. How rarely do we get a female-male friendship that has no romantic aspect. She ends up marrying, she ends up having a child that is beautifully written. She struggles with mental health, which is also fascinatingly depicted on the page, and also so cool that she still manages to do her career and everything. So Lab Girl definitely was the absolute highlight of the last reading month. Best book. I would recommend it to anyone who likes non-fiction with a personal twist. So this has a sort of weird mix of like biography and also nature writing about it. Also just for like fans of really weird deserted places in the States, because that does also feature a bit of sort of genealogy, history is wrapped up in there. History maybe not, but sort of family history, because her family's from Scandinavia, Norway. So that does feature on the page, and just, yeah, so great. You really come to love hope, which that's a great sentence. And it again wasn't what I was expecting. I thought it would be much more the story of young scientist sort of making her way through the beginning of academia, working on her PhD, but that's really just the beginning. And she is really a scientist in her own right. She does, of course, talk about the struggles of sort of making it as a woman in a really male-dominated field. So yeah, just so many good things in this book. Recommend it to anyone. Scrap that about non-fiction lovers, everyone. Great book. A total coincidental find in the bookshop, and those are the best. So I did end on a high, even though I really didn't love the reading month. So far, it's going better, I hope. And I did really rediscover my love for reading non-fiction. Difficult sentence. I'll leave you with that. I hope you had some great reads during your Springathon Readathon. The atmosphere was really lovely with this one. Actually, the people who joined in, was just a really pleasant experience. But what else would you expect from people who love nature writing, really? And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.